There's no room for you there, Mom. Kevin's words shattered the quiet in my small living room. I looked at his hands I'd held when he took his first steps. Now they were a stranger's hands, wrapped around the coffee mug I'd just poured for him. The house only has 3 bedrooms, one for us, one for Leo, and the third will be my home office. Stephanie thinks it's better if we set our own rhythm as a family. I felt the floor drop out from under me. The apartment, which had always felt so cozy, suddenly seemed too small, suffocating. My lungs seized. I understand. The words felt hollow. I rose, needing motion, anything to steady the tremor already seizing my hands, and reached for the coffee pot. Mom, it's nothing personal. Kevin's voice, smooth and practiced, like a corporate briefing, continued. It's just... Stephanie believes it's crucial for us to establish our own customs, our own family dynamic. Stephanie thinks. Always Stephanie. Of course, son. I understand. A lie. How could I? Not after everything. You must be wondering how we arrived here. How my only son, the boy for whom I'd sacrificed everything, was now, in stark, measured words, telling me I no longer fit into his life. Everything started to change about 3 years ago, when Stephanie came into our lives. At first, she seemed perfect, polished, from a good family, always with a ready smile. She'd join us for Sunday dinners, lavish praise on my cooking, and lean in, feigning interest in my stories about Kevin's childhood. Oh, Susan, that story about Kevin ditching school to find his dad is amazing. You were so strong, raising him all by yourself. I'd beam, proud, while Kevin, mortified by the childhood anecdotes, rolled his eyes. Stephanie, for her part, seemed genuinely eager to absorb our history, to weave herself into its fabric. Their wedding was simple, but beautiful. I'd saved for months to buy a new light blue dress. Kevin looked so handsome at the altar, so much like his father. I wept through the ceremony, tears of joy mingling with an undefined ache, as if something precious was slipping away even before it had truly gone. You look beautiful, Susan, Stephanie told me before the ceremony, adjusting my costume pearl necklace, a forgotten birthday gift from Kevin years ago. You'll be the most elegant mother-in-law in the church. I believed her, believed I was part of this new family, taking shape before my eyes. The first tremors of change were subtle. Sunday dinners, once sacred, became sporadic. We're tired, Mom. We have plans with Stephanie's parents. We're traveling with her friends. The excuses varied, but the outcome was constant. A widening chasm between us. When Leo was born, I thought things would get better. Grandparents are important, aren't they? A cornerstone, I thought. For a brief, precious window, I felt indispensable again. I'd go to their apartment almost every day, help with Leo, prepare their meals, wash endless piles of tiny clothes. Susan, you don't need to use baby powder on Leo. It's old-fashioned, bad for his lungs, Stephanie stated, her grip gentle but firm as she took Leo from my arms. But I always used it on Kevin, and look how strong he grew up, I countered. Times have changed. Now we follow the pediatrician's recommendations. Kevin, watching from the bedroom doorway, offered only a shrug. Mom, Stephanie's read all the books. She knows what she's doing. That was the first time I truly tasted irrelevance. My experience, my decades of life, rendered meaningless by books Stephanie had read. My visits to Leo dwindled. When I did visit, I'd catch glances exchanged between them, a silent dismissal whenever I offered a suggestion or recounted how we used to do things. Stephanie's polite smile never quite reached her eyes. How interesting, Susan. But these days, we do things differently. These days. As if my life, my wisdom were relics. Something for a museum, not for living. And then came that Sunday 3 months ago. Kevin arrived alone, a rare occurrence. He settled uncomfortably on the sofa I'd bought with so much sacrifice. The same sofa where I'd cradled him through fevers, helped him with homework, celebrated his college acceptance. "Mom, we need to talk about the future," he began, eyes fixed on some point beyond me. And here we were, back to the moment my son, the boy I'd raised, was telling me I no longer fit into his life. "It's temporary, Mom," Kevin pressed on, as if reading the unspoken question in my eyes. "Once we're settled, you can visit. It's just not possible for you to move in right now. Visit, like a distant relative, an acquaintance requiring an invitation to see her own flesh and blood." "I understand perfectly," I managed, pouring more coffee, the stream a blur through the tears blurring my vision. "You need your space." "Exactly." He exhaled, visibly relieved by my apparent acquiescence. "I knew you'd understand. You've always been so... reasonable." Reasonable. That was my label. The mother who never made waves, who always understood, who sacrificed without a murmur. The invisible mother. "When do you leave?" I asked, forcing my voice level. 2 weeks. The company's handling the relocation. 2 weeks. 14 days to absorb the reality. My son, my grandson, my daughter-in-law, 2 hours away. 14 days to internalize that I had no place in this new chapter. "I'll miss you," I ventured, a raw knot tightening in my throat. Kevin finally met my gaze, a fleeting flicker of guilt in his eyes. "I will too, Mom, but it's best for my career. And Stephanie's already found a great school for Leo." "Stephanie's already found?" Stephanie decided. Stephanie thinks it's better. That night, after Kevin left, I sat alone on my balcony. The same apartment where I'd raised him, where I'd paced through sleepless nights, where I'd celebrated every small, hard-won victory. My gaze fell on the plants I cultivated with such care. A small vertical garden, my quiet pride. Some flowers were wilting, their vibrancy fading. "At least you still need me," I whispered, carefully watering each pot, a silent plea. The following weeks passed in a blur of autopilot. I helped with the moving preparations, packed a few boxes, offered polite smiles when required. Kevin and Stephanie, consumed by logistics, never noticed my silence, my fading presence. The farewell was brief, almost perfunctory. Stephanie offered a quick, airless hug. Leo was already asleep in the car. Kevin pressed a fleeting kiss to my forehead. "We'll call you when we get there, Mom." And they were gone. Taking the noise, the life, leaving behind a silence that screamed from every corner of my apartment. The days that followed were a desolate expanse. Sparse messages trickled in, photos of Leo. But the invitations never materialized. On the rare calls, the excuses were rote. "We're renovating. Leo has a stomach bug. We have plans this weekend." I began to understand. No room for you wasn't about a physical bedroom. It was about their lives. My space in them had vanished. It was a rainy Tuesday, exactly a month after they'd left, when I spotted Marcia at the supermarket. We hadn't seen each other in years, not since we worked together on the hospital's cleaning crew. She was in the checkout line, her hair now completely gray, but with the same warm smile as always. "Susan, my goodness, it's been ages!" We embraced right there, amidst the groceries and the impatient queue. Marcia insisted we grab coffee at the bakery next door. Over warm coffee and a shared pastry, I poured out everything. The words, a torrent, carried with them the tears I'd held back for too long. Susan, why don't you go back to work? The hospital needs volunteers in the children's ward. You always had a knack with kids, she urged, her warm hand covering my trembling ones across the table. Work? Marcia, I'm 67! So what? Are you waiting until you're 100 to live for yourself? She laughed, that frank, infectious sound. Look, I'm not talking about scrubbing floors like we used to. It's volunteer work. A few hours a week, reading to the kids, playing with them. I'm sure you'd be perfect. I walked home that day carrying something I hadn't felt in a long time. A fragile spark of hope. The very next day, I was there. The same hospital where I'd worked decades ago, filling out volunteer forms. The program coordinator, a woman younger than me but with kind eyes, interviewed me briefly. Susan, what brings you to our volunteer program? I considered telling the truth, that I felt hollowed out, discarded, desperate for a purpose. But I simply smiled. I've always loved children. I raised my son on my own, and now that he's gone his own way, I have free time to help other kids. She smiled back, a knowing warmth in her eyes, as if she heard the unspoken plea. Welcome to our team, Susan. We start next Monday. A week later, I stepped into the pediatric ward, my first day as a volunteer. The hospital's scent, once tied to the grueling work of cleaning, now held a different meaning. The vibrant walls, the children's artwork, the gentle smiles of the nurses. It all felt like a warm embrace. I was assigned to read to 3 long-term patients. Lily, an 8-year-old with leukemia, captivated me instantly. Are you going to be my hospital grandma? She asked, her wide brown eyes assessing me. If you'd like, I will, I replied, a warmth unfurling deep inside. Great. My real grandma lives too far away to visit. Now I have you. In that moment, an unexpected truth bloomed. I'd found purpose again. The children called me Grandma Susan, their smiles illuminating my days. I forged friendships with other volunteers, women whose stories echoed my own. Mothers whose children had carved their own paths, leaving them adrift. I began visiting the hospital 3 times a week. Thursdays, after my shift, a few of us would gather at a local coffee shop. We'd talk about everything, our children, our grandchildren, recipes, current events. A diverse group, united by the shared journey of late-life reinvention. At home, I began to reclaim my apartment. Kevin's old room, which I'd kept intact like a forgotten shrine, became my sanctuary. I bought vibrant fabrics, crafted new throw pillows, filled it with plants. It was my reading nook, where I'd lose myself for hours in the children's books borrowed from the hospital. Kevin's calls remained rare, but now when he called, I wasn't always available. Mom, I called last night. You didn't pick up. Oh, honey, I was with my reading group. We meet Wednesdays now to discuss children's books for volunteering. A beat of silence on his end. Kevin sounded surprised, as if a life beyond waiting for his calls was an alien concept. 3 months unfolded in this new routine, one I'd meticulously built for myself. It wasn't perfect. Lonely nights still crept in. The ache for my grandson persisted. The sting of rejection lingered. But I was living, not merely existing. It was one of those nights. Kevin called. I was just about to leave for dinner, celebrating Marcia's birthday with my volunteer friends. Mom. His voice was tight, unfamiliar. Hi, honey. Everything all right? I'm just heading out. A friend's birthday. Mom, Stephanie, and I, we're having problems." He paused, the words clearly difficult. "She got a job offer in another city, and we've decided to separate. I'm coming back to São Paulo with Leo. I'll need help." A whirlwind of emotions hit me. Sadness for him, worry for Leo, and yes, I confess, a sharp pang of bitter satisfaction. Fate, it seemed, had carved out a space where none had existed. "Of course I'll help, honey," I replied, adjusting a new earring, my reflection in the mirror showing a woman in a dress bought just for tonight. "But I need you to understand something. I have my own life now. I volunteer at the hospital 3 times a week. I have my friends group on Thursdays. I can help, but it will be on my terms." The silence on the other end spoke volumes. He'd never conceived of me as someone with a life of my own, with choices, with boundaries. "Okay, Mom," he finally said, his voice subdued. "We can talk when I get there." I hung up, finished getting ready. The night outside my window was clear, studded with stars. Life, I mused, truly does come full circle. Sometimes you have to lose something to find something else, something perhaps even better. I grabbed my purse, closing the apartment door behind me. As I waited for the elevator, Kevin's words echoed. "There's no room for you there, Mom." I smiled at my reflection in the metallic elevator door. Perhaps there hadn't been room for me in the life he'd planned, but I had carved out my own space, my own place in the world. And now, with a twist of irony, he needed to find space for himself in the life I'd built, without him. The elevator arrived. I stepped in, ready for the night with my friends. Tomorrow I'd consider Kevin and Leo's return. Tomorrow I'd decide what this new dynamic would entail. But tonight, this moment, was mine. And for the first time in a long time, that felt more than enough. When I arrived, Marcia and the others were already there, laughter bubbling around a table festive with colorful balloons. They waved, bright smiles welcoming me. "Susan, I thought you weren't coming," Marcia exclaimed, rising to embrace me. "Sorry I'm late. My son called with news." I hesitated, still reeling from the conversation with Kevin. "Good news or bad?" Teresa, another volunteer, asked, pouring me a glass of wine. I sank into my chair, looking at these women who had become my anchors these past months. He's separating, coming back to São Paulo with Leo. A knowing silence settled over the table. They understood the complexities of family, the relentless ebb and flow of expectations and disappointments. "And how do you feel about it?" Marcia asked, ever direct. I took a slow sip of wine. Confused. Sad for him, of course. Relieved to have Leo closer, but also apprehensive. "Apprehensive about what, dear?" Teresa leaned in, her kind eyes unwavering. "Of falling back into the old pattern, of becoming the convenient mother-grandmother again. Used when needed, forgotten when not." A specific memory surfaced then, from 6 years ago when Kevin was in college. A Sunday afternoon. He'd brought friends over to study. I was in the kitchen preparing snacks. "Mom, you don't have to keep popping in," he'd said, low, when I brought the sandwiches. "We're trying to focus." "I just brought you something to eat," I'd replied, a sharp sting. "Yeah, thanks. Just leave it." He barely glanced at me, already back to his books and friends. That night, I'd cried silently in my room, feeling utterly invisible in my own home. A chilling premonition of what was to come. "Susan, are you with us?" Marcia's voice pulled me back. "Sorry, just remembering something." I shook my head, pushing the memory away. What I fear is that now, needing me again, he'll expect me to abandon everything I've built, to simply revert to his mother, Leo's grandma. And you're not gonna do that, are you? Carol, the eldest at 75, her wisdom a quiet force, asked, "No." The word firm and clear surprised even me. "I'm not. I love my son. I love my grandson. But these past months I've learned to love myself too." The women around the table smiled, some raising their glasses in a silent toast. "Then let's celebrate that too tonight," Marcia declared. "To Susan, who found her space." We toasted, we laughed, we shared stories. For a few hours, Kevin's call faded completely, lost in the pure joy of the present moment, surrounded by people who truly saw me. 3 days later, Kevin arrived with Leo. Rain slicked the street as the taxi pulled up. I watched from the window as he unloaded their bags, Leo's small hand clutched in his. My grandson was bigger than in the photos, his hair longer, his face less round. When I opened the door, Leo launched himself at me, hugging my legs. "Grandma Susan, I missed you!" I knelt, pulling him close, inhaling the familiar scent of child shampoo in his hair. "I missed you too, my love. So much." Kevin stepped in, looking utterly drained, defeated. His eyes were red-rimmed, as if he'd cried or slept too little. Probably both. "Hi, Mom," he murmured, dropping the bags. He hesitated, then offered a brief, almost perfunctory hug. "Thanks for having us." "This will always be your home, too," I replied, and the truth of it settled deep within me. Despite everything, my love for my son remained an unshakable constant. I made them a snack while Leo, a whirlwind of energy, rediscovered corners of the apartment he barely remembered. Kevin sat at the kitchen table watching me, his silence heavy. "You changed the decor," he finally observed. "Yes, I made a few changes. I didn't mention the transformation of his old room. He'd discover that soon enough. It's nice, different, but nice." I placed a cup of coffee in front of him. "How are you, honey?" "Truly." He sighed, a deep, ragged sound, running a hand over his face. "Destroyed, Mom. I never saw it coming. I thought we were building a life." Then, out of nowhere, Stephanie says she got an offer she couldn't refuse in another city and that she doesn't love me anymore. I sat across from him, taking his hand. For a moment, I saw the 12-year-old boy who'd cried when his father left us. "I'm so sorry, honey. The hardest part is Leo. How do I explain that his mom chose her career over him?" I frowned. "Don't frame it that way, Kevin. Stephanie didn't choose her career over her son. She made a difficult decision, as adults sometimes must." He stared at me, surprised. "Are you defending her?" "I'm not defending anyone. I just think it's crucial Leo doesn't grow up believing he was abandoned. You two can work out an arrangement that functions for everyone." Kevin was silent for a few moments. "You've changed, Mom." Not an accusation, just an observation. I offered a faint smile. "Life moves on, son. For all of us." That night, after Leo was asleep on the makeshift sofa bed in the living room, I showed Kevin what I'd done with his old room. "I've transformed it into my reading and craft space," I explained, opening the door. "I need it to prepare the activities I do with the kids at the hospital." The room, once a teenage sanctuary preserved for years, now boasted pastel walls, a plush armchair, shelves brimming with children's books, and craft supplies neatly organized in colorful bins. On one wall, drawings from the hospital kids, including a portrait of me by Lily, with hospital Grandma Susan scrawled beneath it. Kevin surveyed it all in silence, his face a complex blend of surprise and something I couldn't quite place. Nostalgia, perhaps, or regret. "It's beautiful, Mom," he finally said. "Very... you." "Thanks. You two can take my room for now. I'll sleep out here in the armchair. It's quite comfortable." "No, Mom, we can't displace you from your own room." "It's temporary, son," I replied, echoing his own words from months ago. "Until we find a better solution." He caught the reference, his eyes meeting mine with a flicker of recognition. "I deserved that." "It's not about deserving, Kevin. It's about understanding that we all need our space, our place in the world. I found mine. Now let's help you find yours again." The next morning, I woke early, as usual. It was my volunteer day. I quietly made breakfast, leaving a note. "Hospital. Back at 1 p.m. Food in fridge. Love, Mom." When I returned, Kevin and Leo were at the table, drawing together. My son looked up, a hint of fluster in his eyes. "Sorry, Mom. I forgot you had plans." "No problem. How was your morning?" "Good. Grandma, look what I drew." Leo held up a paper filled with colorful figures. "It's you, me, Dad, and the kids from the hospital." I smiled, taking the drawing. "It's beautiful, sweetie. Can I take it to show the kids tomorrow?" "Yes." He beamed, bursting with pride. Kevin watched me, a new curiosity in his gaze. "What's this hospital work like?" While I made lunch, I told him about my volunteering, about Lily and the other children, about how it had woven itself into the fabric of my life. "I never pictured you doing something like that," he commented, helping me chop vegetables. "There's a lot about me you don't picture, son," I replied without a trace of bitterness. "Just as there's probably a lot about you. I don't know anymore." He nodded, thoughtful. "Can we start over? Get to know each other again?" That question pulled me back to another time, years ago, when Kevin was 16. We were in a rough patch, him rebellious, me bone-weary from 2 jobs. "You don't get me, Mom," he'd yelled during an argument about his curfew. "Then help me get you," I'd replied, trying to hold on to my calm. "Let's talk." "What's the point? You only see what you want to see." He'd stormed out, slamming the door, leaving me standing there, feeling an abyss widen between us. Back then, I'd dismissed it as adolescence, something that would pass. I hadn't realized that abyss would continue to grow, silently, over the years. "Mom, what do you think?" Kevin's voice brought me back. "I think so, son. We can start over, as adults, as equals." In the weeks that followed, a new rhythm settled between us. Kevin began casually looking for apartments nearby, no longer in a rush. I maintained my hospital commitments and my friendships. He cared for Leo and started going on job interviews. One evening, about a month after his return, we sat on the balcony after Leo was asleep. Kevin nursed a beer. I sipped chamomile tea. "Mom, I need to apologize," he said, the words abrupt. "For what, specifically?" I asked, not to be difficult, but because the list was long. "For shutting you out. For letting Stephanie dictate the terms of our relationship. For telling you there wasn't space for you." I remained silent for a moment, letting the weight of his words settle. "You know, son, the most painful part wasn't hearing there wasn't physical space for me in that house. It was realizing there was no space for me in your lives at all. As if everything I'd done, everything I'd sacrificed, had simply ceased to matter." He lowered his eyes, shame etched on his face. "I know, and I have no excuses. I got swept away. I wanted so desperately to please Stephanie, to build that perfect family I'd envisioned, that I lost sight of what truly mattered. And what truly matters, Kevin? He met my gaze, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. Unconditional love. The kind of love you always gave me, even when I didn't deserve it. I reached out, touching his cheek, just as I had when he was small. A mother's love isn't about deserving. It's simply there, a constant. But that doesn't mean we should take people for granted. I learned that the hard way, he murmured. We sat in companionable silence for a few minutes, watching the city lights twinkle. I found an apartment, he finally said. 2 blocks from here. 2 bedrooms, small but cozy. Sounds perfect. And it's got a sofa bed in the living room, he continued, a tentative glance my way. For when you want to spend the night, after reading stories to Leo. I smiled, a warm wave of gratitude washing over me. I'd like that very much. And maybe you could take me to meet the kids at the hospital sometime. Leo would love it too. Of course. Lily will adore meeting you both. She always asks about my family. Kevin nodded, finishing his beer. Thanks, Mom, for everything. For taking me back, even after everything. Family isn't about physical space, son. It's about making space in our hearts, even when it hurts, even when it's hard. The next day, I took Kevin and Leo to the hospital, watching my son interact with the children, telling stories alongside me, observing with quiet pride as I did my volunteer work. It was one of the most profoundly rewarding experiences of my life. Your grandma's our hero here, the head nurse told Leo. The kids simply adore the days Grandma Susan comes. Leo looked at me with renewed admiration, and Kevin squeezed my hand, a silent acknowledgement. Lily, frail after a chemo session, still insisted on sitting up to meet Grandma Susan's family. Your son's handsome, she commented with the typical bluntness of children. And your grandson has your eyes. Thanks, sweetie, I replied, adjusting her pillow. Now I get why you're so nice, she continued. You've had a lot of practice being a mom and a grandma. Kevin, seated by Lily's bed, smiled at me over the girl's head. It was a different kind of smile, one filled with a new kind of respect. 2 weeks later, I helped Kevin and Leo move into their new apartment. It was truly cozy, with a small balcony where I placed some of my plants as a housewarming gift. Are you sure you don't want to live with us, Mom? Kevin asked as we organized the kitchen. There's enough space. I smiled, a quiet appreciation for the irony. I'm sure, son. I like my apartment, my independence, but thank you for offering. There will always be space for you here, he insisted. Always. That night, after getting them settled, I returned to my apartment. It was silent again, but differently. Not the silence of loneliness, but the quiet hum of peace, of choice. I settled into my reading armchair, in the room I'd transformed, and picked up the book I was reading to the hospital kids. When I opened it, a note fell out, written in Leo's clumsy hand. To the best grandma in the world, I love you, Leo. And below it, in Kevin's familiar script, to the strongest woman I know. Thanks for teaching me, even when I wasn't ready to learn. With love, your son. I smiled, tucking the note inside as a treasured bookmark. Life indeed takes curious turns. Sometimes you must lose something to find something far greater. Not merely a physical space, but a place of belonging, of purpose, of rekindled love. I looked out at the starry night, a profound peace settling over me. A peace I hadn't known in a long time. Perhaps the true space we need isn't in houses or apartments, but within ourselves and in the hearts of those we love. And that space, once claimed with dignity and self-love, no one can ever take from us. Tomorrow, I'd be at the hospital in the morning, then lunch with Kevin and Leo. This weekend, my friends were coming for afternoon coffee to meet my son and grandson. Different worlds, meeting, expanding, creating new spaces. And I, Susan, at 67, finally understood. My place in the world didn't depend on others granting me space. It was something I'd created myself, step by step, tear by tear, smile by smile. There's no space for you. Those words, once a deep wound, now felt distant, almost irrelevant, because I'd discovered a far more powerful truth. There is space for all of us, as long as we have the courage to claim it and the wisdom to share it.